I put your slides on the stage, and I'm going from the stage, so you can start. And yeah, I think I hope you your stage is yours. So see you later.
Thank you, Marco, and great to be here with you all. By way of introduction, my name is Michael Berelli, and I work at AI and Partners as a regulatory compliance specialist. AI governance and AI regulation has been at the forefront of a lot of the work we've been doing for over 3.5 years. And we bring an extensive background in both professional services and regulated institutions to that effect. AI and Partners, in that sense, is an AI governance company. We build RegTech solutions and compliance software for the EU AI Act. Now, going to stop there and just focus more on what we're here today. And we're here to talk about the EU AI Act. The EU AI Act is the world's first comprehensive law on artificial intelligence, which came into force or entered into force last week, specifically the 1st of August. It is a risk-based, technology-neutral, and human-centric approach to the regulation of AI systems, and it is derived from both product safety legislation, with various and straddles various other regulatory domains in that sense, including consumer protection and data protection. However, we're here to talk about data, and the best way to start a conversation, which can be very complex, and you have various different ways or viewpoints of looking at this, is to look at what is an AI system and what is data. And from an AI and partner standpoint, we look at data as in terms of the new gasoline. So data was regulated via the GDPR in 2018. So if we think of data being the new gasoline, then AI is the combustion engine. AI ingests data, and data feeds into an AI system, and that data is then used to power that AI system, and it is used to train models, and is effectively what is powers or helps support and facilitate the workings of an AI system. So that's why in that analogy, an AI system is the combustion engine. And we are seeing here with EU Act, the regulation specifically targets the regulation of the combustion engine. So key to this is data. Data is everywhere, and so are AI systems. But how can we have effective data leadership within an AI framework? With an AI legislative framework. So the best thing to move on is to start with what the EU AI Act is. And as I touched on before, it is a technology-neutral, risk-based approach to the regulation of AI systems. So in that sense, it breaks down AI systems into 4 levels: unacceptable, high, minimal, and limited. And the regulation, or the risk level of an AI system drives the compliance requirements. An AI system in this sense covers everything that is automatic decision making based on data. So any algorithm, any model or AI system has to be classified. In that sense, the classification drives the requirements. So when you're thinking about how effective data governance strategies, how to design your data architectures, how to build and deploy our solutions sustainably, and to make sure that the uptake of those are facilitated or in accordance with regulatory requirements, have at the back of your minds that effective data leadership is essential in that sense. Now, just a bit of a brief overview of the EU AI before we delve deeper into the data elements of it. The risk levels are split into 4 levels. So, for example, the first one is unacceptable risk, which is covered under Article 5. And these cover anything from social scoring, biometric identification, and subliminal manipulative techniques. A good example of this is social scoring. So if they're training, let's say your high street bank is using an AI system to categorize or to triage applications, and then to determine if someone's credit worthiness is sufficient to have access to a loan or a certain amount, that relies on data. and that data could be a person's borrowing history, credit score, these types of things. So having a effective control and knowing where those data flows are coming in, how it affects the AI system, and how that system is going to use that data is critical, because that can be a key determinant of the AI system's risk level, as well as the purpose or the use of the AI system in general. The next risk level we have is high risk. Risk in this context refers to the risk of harm posed by an AI system to an individual's health, safety, and fundamental rights. There's even so this leads back to the European Charter of Fundamental Rights, and there's actually one of the fundamental rights enshrined in the Charter is the right to data protection. So the whole concept of data leadership is actually has legislative origins. What they're effectively saying is, as an individual, you do have a right to data protection and making sure that data is handled safely, securely, etc. In addition to GDPR. So back to the AI systems here. Those that are posing high risk to health, safety, and fundamental rights are those where there's a high degree of consumer interaction or B2C touch points. So things like having access to essential public services. If you're denied access to basic healthcare or benefits because an AI system has made that determination, you could argue that that it poses a high risk of harm to you in various ways, harm being psychological, physical, emotional, spiritual, these types of things. So it all leads down, in that sense, the governance of that all boils down to the leadership. What are the policies being set at the top and enforced, monitored, controlled, and operated to make sure that these governance protocols are abided by, and people make sure that the AI systems are used carefully. On the box on the right hand side, we also have a list of non-exhaustive obligations for providers in the sense being developers, so people like Microsoft, or specifically OpenAI, or in or Aleph Alpha, where they build and deploy AI systems. So again, this is good food for thought in terms of how data leadership really sets or really is entwined or aligned with how data is used and managed and curated in day-to-day business processes. This just touches on more of how AI systems, or rather additional context of those. So you have high-risk systems which could either be embedded in a product or standalone. A good example of that would be having a bespoke or standardized large language model, say ChatGPT, or an embedded product. So you could have, if you're using a CRM system with AI-enabled capabilities, that'd be an example of embedded. Or if you have, say, you're using an e-commerce website and there's an AI-powered chatbot, that could be an example of an embedded system. And again, how the key point here around data leadership is knowing what data is feeding each of these systems and how they're used. So especially if it's embedded, because then the data lineage, and the data provenance and how those link together and how those are managed could need to be done very carefully because of the intricate and sometimes ambiguous nature of where those systems lie. In short, if it's embedded, it's a bit harder to spot, or potentially a bit harder to spot than if it's standalone. And again, this could depend on where the AI system is being hosted, whether it's in the cloud or on-prem. Are those environments Dockerized, containerized, and who has access to them, and things like this. And one more point to note: if any of you have ever done SOC 1 or SOC 2 reports, those could actually indicate where those systems are held and give you an idea of the security and the systems controls around those. Again, just touching on examples of the AI systems listed in Annex 3. And data leadership in this sense is not prejudicial to any one or more of those. So if you're using an AI system in law enforcement, it has just as much as weighting as those in critical infrastructure. But obviously the data leadership around that needs to probably be in proportion to the business strategy and how those tie in together. A quick note on the obligations. So providers and users. So a provider would be the one building and supplying the AI system, whereas the deployers using it. They both have obligations. So both, I guess, both sides of the fence both have data leadership responsibilities in the context of building, deploying, and using AI systems. Some may have more additional obligations than others, and there may be some certain weighting or proportionality to those. However, but this is meant to show that when it comes to AI systems, especially when they're using personal data and sensitive data, having good, solid governance controls around there is absolutely critical. Briefly touch on the rules. So even if they're not high risk, there are certain rules that apply. For example, on Article 95, the voluntary codes of conduct are currently being built and discussed at the pan-European level at the moment. So there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of infrastructure elements happening today, which is going to affect the ecosystem, the entire market infrastructure as we move forward. A good example is if you compare it to the payments network and payments infrastructure, all these actors, ecosystems, which are all part of the broader, I guess, infrastructure, are now all being formed for the EU AI Act. And data plays a critical part in that. Just a quick one on general purpose AI models. So these are covered specifically in a chapter under the EU AI Act, and they separate those with systemic risk into not based on a threshold, floating point operations to be specific. The ones that are systemic risk are ones that are likely to be used by a large variety of people today. So let's go back to ChatGPT. It is used quite extensively globally, and that is deemed to pose systemic risk. Some enterprises that is being made publicly aware that they're not allowing employees to go to use them and feed them data, and that is part of the data leadership. So even if they're part of the same industry, the size, nature, scale, and complexity of a company will determine their attitude to risk, determine their attitude to data and the use of AI systems. So everyone is different. No one size fits all, but it is fair to say that having a solid policy, I guess, and a solid approach around data, the leadership of that, how it's handled, who has access to it, is essential in driving the business forward. Because if you're not allowing employees or entire business divisions access to an AI system because of the data concerns, then if you could address those data concerns, then you could open up yourself to more opportunities in that sense. There's a new governance structure being built around the EU AI Act. So by way of example, the European AI Office at the top right has been fully formed. They had their first meeting, and they are essentially an arm of the Commission. They are also a member of the EU Artificial Intelligence Board, which is again a pan-European structure comprised of representatives of member states, the European Data Protection Supervisor and Board, as well as the European AI Office, and they have input from the Advisory Forum and Scientific Panel. So bigger picture, they're creating entire infrastructure full of both representatives across the private and public sector to make sure that we can deploy AI safely and securely and make sure drive the uptake of trustworthy AI. Fundamental rights, again, is at the core of this. So when you're deploying or using an AI system, you have to do something called a fundamental rights impact assessment. For those of you in the audience who are familiar with GDPR, the equivalent there would be the data protection impact assessment. So you would assess the impact from that sense. Here, you have to assess the impact of an AI system on a high-risk AI system on an individual's fundamental rights. I believe there's more than 30 of those. And you have to be very prescriptive and go through each one of those and outline the specific risks and types of harm again, this is a mechanism that they're using to try and drive people to, I guess, to go forward with a lot of forethought, consideration, and as well as adhering to regulatory obligations, making sure that they know what their AI system is doing and they know why they need the data. Now, this all leads to the timeline. The timeline of the EU Act it follows a very similar trajectory to the EU AI Act. The GDPR. So if you go back to the analogy at the start, we had the GDPR being the regulation of data. The EU Act is the regulation of the combustion engine. And they both had a two-year time frame. The difference with this one is the staggered timeframes for compliance within the 2-year period. So, for example, it's entered into force last week, and companies now have 6 months to identify and either de-risk or decommission any prohibited AI system. And as you can see here, there are further obligations that apply from 12, 24 months, and 36 months. So what they're trying to say is that they're rolling out staggered requirements based on their proportionality and, I guess, urgency in managing the risks of the AI posed to individuals in relation to an AI system. Companies obviously do have 2 years to comply, but the 6 month time frame for prohibited systems is very critical in that sense. So a good port of call would, in the same way that you did an inventory of your data in GDPR, to do the same. So you can leverage your data leadership strategies and your practices with your AI leadership and AI practices in that sense. But this all leads back to strategy. So if you don't have, you have strategic thinking, you have tactical thinking, and operational. So the strategic thinking has to be the forefront of any solid, progressive, and constructive movement forward with respect to the EU Act. So data governance principles derives from both the AI and data strategy. So as you can see in this infographic, the relationship between the data and the AI model is critical, and both either the AI strategy must or is strongly recommended to incorporate data elements of the data strategy and vice versa. They are both independent in that sense, but obviously are mutually beneficial. So we believe that effective data leadership considers elements from a holistic standpoint. It goes without saying, when you're mentioning data, the quality is essential and it's a key determinant of trust. AI systems, there's been accusations of them being unexplainable, non-transparent, very ambiguous. So if we're talking about trust and how to build and cultivate and deliver trustworthy AI, the data quality needs to be succinct and the data quality needs to be robust, controlled, and assured. So this infographic again just gives you an indication of where data quality is likely to arise, how you can manage it, and the elements or metrics and measures of benchmark measures of success. Again, it would be slightly. It wouldn't be appropriate to mention data leadership without AI governance. AI governance relies on data leadership. So when you're talking about end-to-end AI governance process, it does comprise various elements of data governance and leadership around that. So you could see, for example, in the second step here, for the strategy, you have the EU AI Act. And then in terms of planning, you have regulatory oversight. So you're seeing a lot of interchange or intersections between the GRC elements and the strategic commercial elements, and they work in tandem. And it's all part of what does end-to-end AI governance look like? Well, this is one method of ensuring trustworthy AI. Ethics are a key element of this. So having a strict 3 lines model, for those of you in the audience who probably from an auditing or assurance background will know the importance of having good records, having good processes, governance, accountability, and having an ethics board, and having solid fundamentals around the use and deployment of an AI systems is critical. So here you can see how data, for example, on the ethics board on the left-hand side, and the governance of data is a critical aspect in that sense. I'd just like to finish off with a few direct links to Article 10. So Article 10 covers data governance and what's required for high-risk systems. And these can be broken down into 4 elements. I guess in certain sense, you go back to basics, having solid processes for data collection, preparation, and processing, conducting thorough assessments, and many of these protocols which people are very familiar with. These are probably, we suspect, or we suggest that companies in regulated sectors such as financial services will be very familiar with these, because these almost complement or tie in to a lot of obligations that they're already subject to, such as CRD, CRD4, the Solvency II directive, and other very rigorous, very comprehensive regulations that need to be considered in the course of business. And lastly, to finish off with, clear practices. Whilst there are many, the ones that we would strongly consider, at least to begin with, as part of a forward-thinking strategy: policies, culture, technology leveraging, and engagement. Some people break them down into people, process, technology, and you could argue that these tie in with this, but this is supposed to be this is laser focused on the requirements of Article 10 and the wider objectives of the EU AI Act in driving the uptake of trustworthy AI. And with that, I'd love to answer any questions or comments you guys have, and thank you for having me on. Thank you for having me on. Mirko, do we have any questions?
Waiting. I came back. No, I have no questions. It was very, very interesting, and we have the good thing, I think, is we have some time to react on it. So when I understand it right, we start at the August, and we have 6 months for the first step. Is it right?
That is correct. So that would be prohibited systems under Article 5. So those are the ones that are deemed to pose an unacceptable risk of harm to an individual's health, safety, and fundamental rights. Good example are those AI systems that use manipulative or deceptive techniques. So that could be AI use cases that induce you to purchase a product or service without you knowing it, and they've used your data to profile you. So if you're interacting with very subtle marketing techniques, that could be in scope.
Okay, let's go. We have 4 questions actually. Do this impact all companies and me personal? I think the question is it only for companies, and is it all the same for all companies, is it also impact my personal life? I think this is the question.
So Ulrike, if I pronounce your name correctly, and let me know if I haven't, that's a great question. It is similar to GDPR. It is industry agnostic and firm and business model agnostic in that sense. So it affects firms of all types, nature, scale, and complexity across the spectrum. So you could be a small retailer in the manufacturing sector or a very large multinational investment bank and financial services. You would both be subject to this. There are certain carve-outs and exemptions for SMEs and startups, but essentially all these types of companies are within scope to the extent that there is a European footprint presence, or nexus.
Okay, here's the next question. Are there also high-risk opportunities additional to high-risk systems?
Would you mind clarifying what you mean by high-risk opportunities?
I don't know. Yeah, awaiting if there came in clarifying. So we have another question from Joost. Is it fit for all size companies?
Yes, used, if I pronounced your name correctly. Yes. Similar to the question before, it affects companies of all sizes across all industries. There was, I believe, some research done by Digital Europe last year with potential European unicorns who voiced concern specifically from the scale-up community or standpoint. There are arguments that it could further entrench the position of incumbents in various industries, but that's why there's certain carve-outs and exemptions made available for startups and SMEs.
Okay, then we have also, this is a hard question, I think, Ulrike. How do you understand AI? Is there a definition what they mean with AI? I think.
Another great question. So the definition leverages what the OECD AI used. Now, that being said, during the legislative process, it changed multiple times. And what we see today, there's a disparity between the legal definition and academic. So the academic definition broadly covers anything that's machine learning, models, and LLMs, whereas the legal definition covers everything that is automatic decision making based on data. So covers any algorithm, any model or AI system. So in that sense, it's very extensive. And we strongly urge companies to start the discovery phase of identifying and inventorying all their systems. Because I said the risk level of an AI system, model, algorithm drives the regulatory requirements. But until you know how many of those you have, it is difficult, if not impossible, to know your exposure to the EU AI Act.
Okay, nice. Okay, we have clarified for the last question from Luis. It shows you right. Is there a difference between companies and their risk? Is an airport or a bakery different? I think. Yeah.
So that is a very interesting question, Luis. I'm glad you answered it. Yes. The difference is based on the use. And the best example is you could have the same AI system. So you could be using a general purpose AI system or a model. I go back to ChatGPT. In a bakery, you could effectively use it for a low risk use case, whereas someone in the banking sector could use it to help determine or allocate a loan to someone, which could affect them buying a house or taking a mortgage or servicing their debt. So you have the same system. In one context, it could be minimal or limited risk. In the other context, it could be high risk because of the use. So even one of the nuances and critical nuances, but very interesting elements of this is the use of an AI system is the key factor in determining its risk level. Even if its design, function, and functional characteristics and features are minimal or limited, the context of an AI system is critical because that is the ultimate determinator or determining factor of its risk level.
Okay, cool. There's no question from the chat, so the people can ask. So I ask a question. So what is the penalized or the punishment I get or the company can get? It's like I pay, I don't know, what was GDPR? I think 3% of their yearly income or something, or a million. I don't know. This was something like this. I don't. Is it the same here, or is it more like, please do it?
So it's similar to GDPR in that sense. There are fines based. the structure of the fines are similar. So GDP, I believe you had 4% of global annual turnover, 20 million euros. It's a bit higher for the E-Ray Act. So the maximum penalty on Article 5 would be 7% of global annual turnover, or 35 million euros. So that applies for every model, algorithm, or system that you have. There are various other fines that apply. So they've categorized them. And because this is so extensive, there are, I believe, the 3 separate articles actually covering the different types of fines, the amounts that apply, and all this type of thing. What this is, I guess, reading between the lines, it just shows you that non-compliance with this can have severe regulatory, reputational, and financial risks for a company.
Okay, and how it's called? Is there some insurance for this? Is there companies they do? I don't know this. Yeah, for GDPR, I can say, okay, I get insurance and don't get for, I don't know what's happened when you I get to jail or something. The CEO, I don't know. Is there like also insurance or yeah?
So if I understand you correctly, you're talking about insurance and the liability. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Great question. There is a separate legislation called the AI Liability Directive, which is, I believe, work has started and is continuing in September. So that covers the liability of providers and people, other actors in the AI and the value chain, which include, well, the main ones are deployers, providers, authorized representatives, distributors, and manufacturers. So the liability of that is going to be interesting. With respect to insurance, I suspect that a lot of insurers and reinsurers are being approached at the moment to assess their liability risks, and I believe this type of activity happens with every wave of technology. So it's probably no difference in that sense, but the market has to go through a period of understanding, familiarization, to make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted.
And we have another question from you. Thank you again. Could you name some today companies and application of AI that you see now on the market that you question in regard of this AI law?
Good question, Just. It's difficult to pinpoint any one in particular, and I'm going to probably do a cop out and say everything. Every AI system, every model, every algorithm, I would question, because if the context that drives the risk level is the key thing here, and companies don't know how many they have, so you don't know what you don't know, and that's that is very, if that is the modus operandi or standard operating environment for a company, that is extremely concerning, both from no matter where you are on the stakeholder map. So I would say that the sheer volume of them in the market and the sheer volume of use cases and the fact that most people are using them is extremely concerning.
Okay, and so people can ask questions again. So here, my last question is, how does it look when a company will work with AI and partners? How is this onboarding process called?
So the team worked diligently for over 3.5 years, and this ties into the work from the CEO and founder, Sean. So he helped with the implementation of GDPR, and he's really big on servicing the community and making things as easy and effective and efficient as possible. So what the first thing that we ask is, how can we help you? What are your problems? Where do you see, what are the pain points, and how can we address that? And then we work with everyone on their individual circumstance. Obviously, we do have playbooks, we have guides, we have all these things that we've spent a lot of time building, curating, but it depends on individual situation. So we like to understand the client's problem, what they're trying to achieve, We discussed the best port of call for them to go about doing it. By way of example, we've partnered with IBM as an independent software vendor, so our technology is integrated with them. So that helps any AI solution host in the cloud. And we also work with various third country firms, such as an Oman-based fintech company and a South African AI company who want to access the European market. So we're very open to working with anyone, and we're happy to spend the time to get to know you, your business, and what you'd like to achieve.
Okay, thank you. There are no questions comes again. So thank you for the presentation. And yeah, we for the people that are interested, we have on next event on Microsoft Fabric and Power BI with Nikola Ilic. And you can also look at our meetup group to see all the other events. So the next step is, or the next thing is, we make a recap, and we hope on Monday, and we also get the slides in it. And yeah, thank you so much for all they stay here, and yeah, have a nice day or rest day. Bye.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you, everyone.